In the last year, more than 7,000 Mexicans have been killed in the drug war. Police chiefs and other law enforcement officials are often targeted. They even tried to assassinate a Mexican governor. While President Obama promises to stop the flow of arms, some say the best way to beat those drug cartels would be to legalize marijuana in the United States. Bruce Mirken is the communications director for the Marijuana Policy Project. John Carnevale is president of Carnevale Associates and has worked under 4 drug czars. Gentlemen, great to have you both with us.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Bruce, let's start off with you. If we simply legalize marijuana, does this drug war simply go away? Does all that violence go away, or do these drug cartels simply deal in harder core drugs?
Well, the fact is that marijuana, according to officials on both sides of the border, provides about 2/3 of the income for these Mexican cartels. This is a huge industry. It's the largest cash crop in America, bigger than corn and wheat combined. And our laws have handed this whole huge consumer industry lock, stock, and barrel.
Drug cartels to replace that source of revenue from marijuana with another, maybe more dangerous form of drugs.
There is no drug with the sort of market that marijuana is. It is by far the most widely used illegal drug. According to U.S. government surveys, about 15 million Americans admit to government survey takers that they've used it in the last month.
John, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
John, 100 million Americans over their lifetime have said they've used it. Basically, we spend $68 billion a year on corrections, $150 billion on police and courts. Half of all of that is nonviolent drug arrests. The majority of that is marijuana. Basically, the industry is bigger than wheat and corn combined. Why wouldn't we legalize it at this point? Take the money away from the bad guys, put money in the system.
The answer is really quite simple. If you legalize marijuana, you're going to end up with even a greater demand for marijuana. You're going to have more people using it, and you're going to have more social costs associated with that.
That's not true. In the Netherlands, that's not true. Their usage rate actually is growing smaller, and they have it legalized there. So the opposite is true, possibly.
No, but the bottom line is you legalize something, it's going to be more available, and it's going to be more widely used, and that's going to create a problem for Mexico in terms of what's going on. We know our demand for drugs, illicit drugs, in the United States is fueling all the problems down in Mexico along the border. And any efforts we have that would increase that demand would certainly contribute negatively.
Well, Bruce, that's a wildly sweeping statement to say that this is causing all the problems in Mexico. I would say corrupt governments. I would say NAFTA issues that are changing constantly. I would say there's quite a few problems in Mexico beyond legalization of drugs. We're allowing them to give an input of tax to the government agents who actually could put this to work constructively rather than for the drug kingpins.
The real problem is we've taken this massive market and handed it lock, stock, and barrel to unregulated criminals, just like we did with alcohol during Prohibition in the 1920s. We made Al Capone rich and cut out legitimate businesses. And Mr. Carnevale is simply wrong when he talks about the effect of laws and criminal penalties on drug use. All of the research from all over the world shows that they have little or no effect. After 30 years of effective legalization in the Netherlands, their rate of marijuana use is less than half of ours.
John, you know, Bruce makes some pretty interesting points, and when you argue your side, it does sound sort of reminiscent of the days of Prohibition.
Well, it does sound that way, but at the bottom line, marijuana isn't an illegal drug for a reason, because it's not a healthy drug. It doesn't have any medical benefit, no medical value. It has damaging consequences.
I'm sorry, that's nonsense.
There's studies from the National Institute of Drug Abuse that prove this, and we've got a lot of money invested in research that demonstrate just how dangerous this drug is.
So in fact, marijuana, we've got to talk about this, because marijuana is safer than alcohol. It is less addictive. It is massively less toxic. It's orders of magnitude less likely to cause violence or aggression,
since when are we
which is the main social cost of alcohol.
I don't know why we're making different drugs a contest here. Heroin may be more dangerous than marijuana or cocaine, but the bottom line is they're all dangerous drugs.
I want to ask you guys, time out for 1 second. I want to ask Mackie and Melissa a question. You know, I got kids, and I'm for legalizing them, but are we sending out an endorsement signal of one more vice, so to speak? Economically, it makes sense.
Well,
I would do it.
Johnny,
I want to ask Mackie and Melissa.
This is specifically why the argument that comparing drugs is a fallacious construct. Basically, we're sending no more of a positive message than we are when we have ads for Johnny Walker on the back of every magazine.
Let me ask you a question.
We've got bars in every corner.
What sort of
it's
a
simply
message?
ridiculous to say that this drug is worse than liquor and therefore it should be banished.
John,
it doesn't make any sense.
Look, let's talk a little bit about the
John and then Bruce. John and then Bruce.
Let's first focus on the word legalization. What exactly does that word mean? Does it mean that all drugs are equally available to everybody at the same time. Yeah, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and at no cost.
Our shot of vodka
proposing that. Nobody is proposing that.
Well, that's what the word means. So obviously we're all against legalization.
Well, that's not a word I use.
Well, we're obviously all agreeing that we're against legalization. The issue now is, okay, if we can't have that sort of regime, then we have to have a decriminalization regime, which is what we have with alcohol.
No, what you can do is you can tax and regulate marijuana like we do alcoholic beverages.
And so you're thinking this will stimulate the economy?
Please let me finish. Have everybody who produces it, everybody who sells it, licensed and regulated, give them a common sense set of rules to abide by, just like we do with liquor licenses. And what we can do is then have controls. If you think marijuana is bad, why do you want it sold only by unregulated criminals?
And Bruce, I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, so don't play semantics with me in terms of whether or not we're going to allow them to smoke up, boyo, because Daddy says this is legal. That's absurd. It's an age restriction. We've legalized plenty of drugs, and we have a tax problem. So tell me what's wrong with this.
There's a lot of folks in this country are still worried about alcohol. I'm not one of them, but there's, in terms of what we should do in terms of prohibition. But the social cost from alcohol abuse is well over $200 billion. It's one of the main reasons that people go to hospitals. We know that. Likewise, if you get into illicit drugs like marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and start talking this kind of language, you may think you're solving sort of violence and problems like that along the border, but in fact what you're doing is causing demand for these drugs to increase, which will create greater social costs.
There is no
we got to wrap it, guys.
We got
to wrap it, guys. Good, guys. We can go on for an hour with this. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Coming up next.